Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Carl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast Radio.
Well, the following interview contains descriptions of violent and harrowing acts, which some listeners may find distressing and, in my opinion, is not suitable for children. Against all the odds, Richard McCann succeeded in life. After a violent childhood, which was followed by crime, drugs and imprisonment, Richard turned his life around and is now helping other people to realise their full potential. Richard joins us now to share his incredible story. Richard, yours is the ultimate story of triumph over adversity, and it all started as a very young child.
Well, for the first 5 years of my life, we grew up in a very gritty northern city. In the suburbs with my mum and dad, and lots of alcohol, lots of violence, social services around there all the time. So it was a pretty horrid time, and Dad left when I was 4, and there was a number of boyfriends, all of which were violent. But a week before my 6th birthday was the day, that changed all our lives, and it's a day I'll never forget. Mum going out drinking, and to be fair, she left us in the house on our own, 4 children, which of course she shouldn't have been doing. But the following morning, it was about 5 o'clock in the morning. Sonia, my sister, never forget, she shook me awake and says, "Richard, Mum's not come home. Let's go look for her." So we put our coats on and we wandered the streets. We made our way to the local bus stop and we just sat. And I just remember thinking something's not right. Mum always came home, even though she was a big drinker. She always came home. She was always there when we got up for school. And that, sitting at that bus stop, fearing, well, obviously I couldn't imagine what had really happened to her, but fearing, she'd come to some harm. Her boyfriend just been released from prison, actually. Anyway, after about an hour, we gave up and we went home, and the police came to the house and asking questions. They took us to the local children's home, and that's when our hearts were broken, when the police officer, must have been like a CID officer, plainclothes, he said, "Your mum's been taken to heaven," and explained that we weren't going to see her again. And even though I heard those words, I didn't believe him. And my first school was a Catholic primary school, so I prayed to God to bring my mum back. And I thought they had brought her back later that day. They took us into the visitors' room, and I remember walking in. She wasn't there, of course, but it was a photo shoot for the local papers, and our picture was in the papers, the 4 of us, along with another picture. And it was that news, I guess, item was how my mum's family found out what happened, and that is that she'd been murdered. And she'd actually been found on the field at the back of the house, close to where me and my sister Sonia walked. And we later discovered she was murdered by Peter Sutcliffe, the serial killer. And I don't like saying the name he'd been given, but the Yorkshire begins with R. That was what introduced me to real, acute, painful adversity. And we were reunited with my father, my estranged father, and his parenting skills weren't what they should have been, and he was, like my mum, he was a big drinker, and so we were subjected to some horrific things, including the dog being drowned in the bath. He used to beat us with sticks. So what happened was I just had this feeling of unworthiness, not as good as other people. And then the police came out and they said when the 5th person had died, this was a 16-year-old schoolgirl, she'd left school. They said, "Oh, you killed an innocent one now." And I thought, hang on, wasn't my mum innocent? So I grew up scared of my dad, scared that my mum's killer might be going to kill me, especially because Jane was one of our babysitters. And it was just a horrid time growing up.
I want to talk next about how that particular influence on your early life brought you into crime and drugs. First of all, using drugs, and then, of course, dealing drugs. And then, ultimately, you ended up in prison as a result. Provide us with an insight into that chapter in your own life.
I'm not going to make excuses and say that, I got involved in petty crime because of what happened in my childhood. But I suppose because of my childhood, low self-esteem, small circle of friends, when I got involved in recreational drugs, just as drug taking, all of a sudden I was liked and loved, and and I found that really, really attractive, and I fell into the drugs world. Nothing too serious, but I fell into that way. So maybe what happened influenced me doing that, but it's certainly not an excuse. And I went into prison, and the main thing to say here is, once again, like when Mum died, I actually told myself that I was supposed to be arrested so that I would be given this opportunity to turn it around.
Take me back to the day that you came out of prison and you decided you were going to put structure on your life and take a very positive approach going forward from there.
Well, being released from prison was the joy of being released wore off weeks later because I was back in court. I'm getting my house repossessed. And as positive as I had been, like when Mum died and when I first went to prison, when I was told I was given 6 weeks to get myself a job to save my house, and after 5 weeks of probably 25 interviews and rejections, it was really difficult to be positive. I simply couldn't find a way back, or I thought I couldn't find a way back. That was when I formed a suicide pact with my sister, Sonia. And sadly, the day that we discussed it, she got drunk herself and took 30 paracetamol tablets. That telephone call was like I've been hit with a bolt of lightning. So, just to conclude that part of the story, we got her into hospital and saved my sister. And that was what motivated me to then give it one final push to save the house. And I did. In my sixth and final week, I was given a job. And that was the start of the turnaround. And that was the start of creating some stability in my life. So I had a mortgage still, and I had a job now. And then I did a few things, like I took up salsa dancing and I got myself some therapy, various forms of therapy, counselling, psychotherapy, because I knew that I'd been affected by my childhood and a lot of that was unresolved. So that was so coming out of prison in 97 and the next few years was all about rebuilding my life and myself really. And it took a few years, but finally I think the turnaround was when I parted company with the counsellor in 2002. And that was the start of, things turning around.
So provide us with an insight into your career path since you came out the gate of that prison and got the job in that warehouse.
Well, I initially got the job in the warehouse, but because I'm not very academic, no qualifications, but I've always been enthusiastic. So I got promoted in that job, and it was a ladies' wear suppliers, and I got this role to import all the garments from Sri Lanka, and I got pay rise after pay rise, and I managed to pay off the arrears to the banks sooner than proposed. But then something happened in 2002, and I was there for a few years, and my sister Sonia, she stabbed her boyfriend in self-defense. Another one of those incidents that when at the time was obviously tragic. She didn't kill him. But when I look back now, it was instrumental in me doing the work that I do, because what I decided to do in a moment of despair and to try and help Sonia, I decided I'd write a book. I'd tell the story of what we've all been through. And I naively thought that the judge might read the book. That never happened. And actually the police dropped the charges, but I found writing about my life very cathartic. And I continued writing the book, and it came out in 2004. And Just the Boys, the book, and it liberated me for a start. But then it led to, and it's in 11 languages, 500,000 copies, knocked Robbie Williams off the #1 spot, or a book about him. And it was that led to my first invitation to speak, which was on February the 8th, 2005. We're coming up to the anniversary. And I was shocking. And I sat down in a chair, I read a little bit of my book, and I was so nervous. But I did it, and like I speak about now, sometimes you've got to do the scary things because you never know, by stepping outside your comfort zone, where it might lead. Little did I know, and last week was my 3,000th presentation, little did I know how far reaching my career would go.
And I know that the words iCan are hugely important to you, not just for your own life, but to those that you helped through the academy.
Yeah, the iCan, incidentally, Richard McCann, there's iCan in my name, and my name at school was Canny. My dad's name in Derry was Tin Can. So that can has been with me. And you know something? I think it maybe helps me or helps inspire me from time to time throughout my childhood. So it's vitally important. And then, everything, that's what I say, everything starts with iCan. Although I have to say, that's just... iCan's not good enough on its own. You have to follow it up with the I will and doing the work, because we all can do great things, but we can all make a difference. We can all set up our own businesses. We can all write books, but a lot of people don't do these things, and half the time it's because they're walking around with imaginary bars around them rather than the real ones that I had. Limiting beliefs I'm talking about. So, yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and what I'm being asked to do a hell of a lot at the moment is the resilience work. People have been struggling over the last couple of years, and what I like to remind them of is, yes, I can share some techniques, but actually we, as human beings, we have got resilience within us, and it's about tapping back into that, because we've typically been through things throughout our journey already, which we bounce back from, and I take some time to explain that and get them to reflect on their lives.
So Richard, what was your original idea for the iCan Academy and the services that you'd be able to provide to your clients?
When I first started, I didn't know I was going to be a professional speaker. I got asked to share my story 3 times in 2005, and I was a Samaritan volunteer. So it wasn't an academy to begin with. But when I decided in 2006 that, do you know what, maybe I've got something here, maybe I can add value to people's lives, that's when I started to sit down and think about, okay, let's give my business more structure. Let's, what can I do? And so that's, and it's been an evolving journey, and it's still evolving right now with all the virtual work that I'm doing, working with global companies around the world, honestly, virtually, that I would maybe never have dreamt of doing 2 or 3 years ago. So the iCan Academy was just when I started to put some structure around what I did, rather than just, I guess, speaking for the local Samaritans for half an hour. I decided, no, I need to take this seriously, professionalise what I do, and that's why we took the iCan, which I've lived with all my life, and made it the iCan Academy. And we do various things: resilience, keynote speaking, presentation skills training, storytelling, and the new program that we're working on is the growth mindset. So it's iCan Grow, so helping people, think more about themselves.
And Richard, is it true to say that the fear factor is probably the biggest challenge that's holding people back?
If you're talking about speaking and presenting, it is up there. The fear is, it's one of the biggest fears, if not the biggest fear on the planet, although it might have been swamped by the fear of COVID at the moment. But, historically, the biggest fear on the planet is standing up speaking. I think, so fear is important, yes. A lot of what's stopping people progressing in their lives, not just speaking, is negative self-talk. I met a teacher 8 years ago, told me that after a talk, he said, I so needed to hear that. And I asked him, I said, why? He said, well, I've been telling myself that I'm too young to go for assistant head teacher role. And I said, go for it. And, 8 years later, he's now a head teacher, not assistant head, over 3 schools. I've worked with him in his new role. So that's not about fear. That's about just the thinking, the quality of your thoughts. The quality of your thoughts has an impact on the quality of your life that you experience. So limiting beliefs, that's one of the big ones.
You recently said that your 8-year-old son knows something about presenting that most adults don't. What is that?
A few years ago, I was speaking on a weekend. So I took my little boy with me, Ellis, and he carried my bags, and I gave my talk. Incidentally, he joined me on stage, and he's actually spoken to 3,000 people at the age of 8. But we walked into my car, and he turned around and said, Dad, can I ask you a question? He said, do they pay you for that? I said, yes, they do pay me for that, just speaking. He said, but you're just having a chat. It's like you're in the playground with your friends. The point is, it is just a chat. Presentations, it's not like a dark science. It's just speaking. It is a conversation. One of the best books I ever read was Talk Like TED, The 9 Public Speaking Secrets of the World's Top Minds. Number 3 is to have a conversation. And that's what I've been doing with you. And we beat ourselves up. We make it out to be something it doesn't need to be. Relax. It's just a chat. We can all talk, and that's all we need to do when presenting.
What are the keys to mastering the art of storytelling?
There's a number of things. I think when it comes to storytelling, one of the most important things is to relive the story rather than tell the story. So rather than saying, once my teacher came up to me and encouraged me to take part in a public speaking competition, so rather than recount it, I would actually reenact that. So my teacher came up to me and said, Richard, why don't you enter the school public speaking competition? So it's dramatising and recreating the moment so people that are reliving it with you rather than just listening to you tell the story. So that was it's drama. It's become a drama king or become a drama queen, actually, or either. Is where people not go wrong, but when you see people reenact the moment, that's the magic. That's where the magic happens. There's lots of other things I could share, but that's the big one. Reenact the scene.
And from a business perspective, what are the areas that cause the most problems or indeed stress for your clients?
I think that even not just recently with COVID, but I think for the last 17 years I've been in business and helping organisations, the big theme, it's about self-belief. Often people hold themselves back. based on the quality of the thoughts. And often it's because maybe they're not being encouraged by the right people. It may be their environment, their childhood, or maybe they've just not had a good leader that will, get them to think differently about themselves. I mean, one of my first jobs was ironing trousers. I did it for 2 years. And had I not had somebody encourage me to do something different, I may have stayed there for 30 years. We need people around us. So I think, it's self-belief. That's one of the things that holds people back. And it's a common theme for 17 years.
And how do you help those clients to overcome that?
I think me as a keynote speaker, my iCan keynote presentation helps do that and, demonstrates really powerfully where those limiting beliefs might come from, i.e. your childhood, typically, your environment. But also my story demonstrates that with the right mindset, with the right, willingness to step outside your comfort zone, you can achieve great things. In fact, we will never achieve everything we have the potential to achieve. So I think a lot of my programs help people do that.
And Richard, finally, as we enter a world that is hopefully nearing the end of the pandemic, what motivational words do you have for our listeners this morning?
Well, one of the things that I talk about in my resilience workshops is what I call the bounce back graph. If you were to chart your life, the ups and downs of life, we all have the same shape, bounce back graph. I.e., after every setback, you always end up back, it's multicolored, it's in the red or in the green. After every setback or period in the red, you always end up back in the green. So those are which means when that pandemic kicked in 2 years ago, I knew that we would get through it. The danger is this, though. After every period in the green or every period of stability in your life, there's always a setback around the corner, which is why we need to savor those moments in the green or when things are going well, because you might get a phone call tonight. However, if you do get a phone call tonight, know this, you will grow through that experience, post-traumatic growth, they call it. You're growing in ways you wouldn't have done had it not been for the setback. And have we grown over the last 2 years? I know I have.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Richard McCann from the iCan Academy, and I'd like to thank Richard for sharing his phenomenal journey with us this morning.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Carl Fitzpatrick.